life in Cincinnati was coming back, so to speak, in the early 1870s. You had the Civil War from 61 to 65, which really, really damaged the city. Much, if not most, of Cincinnati's industry was shipped south on the river, Ohio and then Mississippi River. When that was blockaded, it harmed Cincinnati in its financial aspects badly, among other things, and didn't come back until the 70s. And I would argue the 70s and 80s financially for Cincinnati, economically, was very prosperous, very, very prosperous.
The Frys were hired by Mariah Longworth Nichols' store to carve the interior of her home. While they were working there, a number of her lady friends came over to visit very well-to-do women in Cincinnati society, and they became very interested in the Frys' work, so much so that they wanted to learn how to carve themselves. And so the Frys started to offer lessons.
Cincinnati was the second largest industrial city, second only to Philadelphia, by 1859. And with the rise of industrialization comes what many considered the debasement of design, because everything was mass-produced. There was a reaction to that.
Ben Pittman, who was more trained in the English tradition of John Ruskin, I think it was John Ruskin who referred to this era as the age of shoddy.
He equated God, beauty, and goodness, all the same. Now, when you take the family unit from the farm to the city, you change the dynamics. On the farm, the man and the woman were roughly equated.
And I think the Civil War, when the men went off, the women had to step in and do things that they traditionally had not done before. So when women began to experiment with going into the workforce, into this new factory work arena, the men resisted this because it was another threat to their livelihood. So women were not welcome.
The man goes off to work, he becomes the breadwinner. She doesn't have that importance anymore. But with the rise of John Ruskin, or Ruskinian philosophy, beauty around you makes you good. Her place is in the home. She had to make certain the home was beautiful. If her husband was a ne'er-do-well, if her children were profligate, that was her fault because she didn't have beauty around them. We laugh at this today, but this was deadly serious back then. In 1873-74, Ben Pittman started the first art carved course at the School of Design. So you've got women already by the early 1870s carving.
The Music Hall organ screen was for sure the largest commission that was executed by the Cincinnati art carvers. When they were building Music Hall, they decided they were going to have this wonderful Hook and Hastings organ, and they wanted to decorate it. Many of the women and the Frys and the Pittmans came forward and said, "We would like to be a part of this, we would like to carve the organ screen." You could argue that it was the most important and largest public art commission in Cincinnati's history. In the 1970s, there was a renovation of the Music Hall organ, and the screen was dismantled, and the parts were kind of dispersed throughout the community.
18 of the panels were installed in the Music Hall orchestra pit, and they've been virtually forgotten for 40 years. So now, with the restoration of Music Hall, the Society for Preservation of Music Hall has the opportunity to restore and to exhibit these panels. And this is what our plan is. So we have hired a conservator to come and take a look at the panels.
There are influences of Ruskin and Morris and that kind of rejection of industrialism, which apparently was really a motivator for them. So that's, it'll be interesting to see how that kind of fits with the interior.
Ask her later.
Wow.
The basic goal of a conservator when approaching any treatment project is to understand what the individual work of art is, what it represents, and what the artist's original intent was.
And then we have electric in the panels and that for your lights and that if you need it.
Oh, perfect.
We've got plenty of stage lighting if you need it.
Tom showed me how this was inscribed.
Yeah.
It's inscribed with an arc with a compass.
So the ladies drew with a compass to make those like.
So he said that shows that that's got to be.
There's been very little done to this surface. You can see all of those little kind of ridges and those facets in the surface.
Yeah.
That's the way the surface looks right off the tool. In other words, you carve it, that's the way the surface looked. So often when we see a piece of furniture, a chair, table, whatever, with carving, the carving often looks kind of like mushy and soft
It's had all this stuff put on it over time.
and stripped and sanded, and but this is really crisp. This is all very good. You see that? So you can almost see how wide of a chisel they were using.
When they did something like this, would this have been laid out too, or was this freehand? Do you think?
I think it was probably a combination of both. I think they drew it out, or there might have been, by this period, they were using some sort of carbon paper where they could lay the pattern on and then use a pencil and draw it in.
Spring was the narcissus back there. Summer was the aster. And then autumn was
Grapevine.
the grapevine. The grapevine is Julia Rice.
There's markings there.
That's an R. Yeah.
I think
maybe.
Like it.
Yeah, you really see it there.
what's really wonderful about these is the provenance. But well, their history, yeah.
That's the one that was donated.
Let's see.
It used to be in
Okay.
Francis Jones Petker's garden.
Yeah, I think that's good. Do that? You want to give it a shot? Huh? She is shot. So this was the panel that was in the garden, someone's garden. There's the initials on the panel look like AHMCG, but I haven't been able to find out who that is. So once we get the entire panel cleaned down, the surfaces are going to resemble this sort of natural cherry color. And I selected these sample boards because this is old cherry. This is about 150-year-old cherry that came out of a barn. Because of the documentation that exists, we're pretty certain that we know what the panels look like. We're not reinterpreting the maker's intent. We're working with the documentation and going with what that tells us. So what we decided to do is we're going to tape off 2 areas of the panel to preserve the coating that's on here. So I'm just applying a commercially available stripper on here to remove this coating. The whole panel was carved from the solid. This is not an applique. So what they did was they started with a panel about an inch or so thick, and then all of this stippled ground was wood that was removed. And then the carved composition was left proud. This is coming off nicely now. Certainly the people carving these panels did not have to go to the gym to get exercise because it was a lot of physical work. This is what we'll do till we get down to the cherry, the natural cherry color. Right here is a carving line from a tool, it's called a veiner or parting tool, but they must have sort of set in the shape of the profile that they wanted, and you can see that right here, when they got to the end here, they just kind of went off into the margin. All of these are very good indications of work by hand and not work, with a machine. There's another layout line right here to define this edge, this lower end of the arch that was scribed into the wood right here. Well, what this indicates is they did the layout on the board. So they had a center point here. That's what's so good when you find pieces that are, relatively unaltered, because I think they can reveal details like that of how people were thinking and just, cultural details that we might not otherwise think about.
Now, there were men. Let's say for every 100 students, there might be 5 men. They left and got jobs in the furniture industries. But the women couldn't do that. Outside the home, it was the man's realm. Women could carve wood and do it wonderfully and become very artistic, but they weren't accepted in society if they painted oils on canvas.
While there were many women working on this project who were very affluent, there were also women like Laura Fry, who was the daughter of William Fry, who was a studio assistant in his workshop, but then also became a very famous, innovative artist in the realm of art pottery. There were also women like Janet Scudder, who were part of this movement, who when they tried to enter the professional field of carving, met with a lot of resistance from joiners' unions. There was also Adina White, who is the only African-American wood carver that we have on record, who started her own business as a carver here in Cincinnati. These women were really the exception to the rule, and they were looking at this movement as a way to not only assert their abilities, but also women's rights.
And once they started feeling good about themselves, what else are they looking to? Why can't I vote? Why can't I do other things? Why can't I paint with oils on canvas? I think it has ramifications that we haven't even researched today that are still up. We're just getting into the art end of it. And I think part of this enabled women to move on to bigger things.